Hi, Stephen E. Andrews, Outlaw Bookseller here, and I thought it was time for an unboxing and a book haul, to use those wonderful YouTube terms, which still make me laugh, even all these months on. So I'm finally on holiday, I'm kicking back, I'm relaxing, I am finding some time to shoot, which is good. And recently I've done some selling on eBay, sold on some hardcovers, a few paperbacks, and made, quite some decent scores, really. One of them was particularly good. So this has enabled me to splash out a bit on some hardcovers for the archive here in the hideout, because I've bought a lot of paperbacks the last few months, and paperback prices are going up. I've mostly bought cheap things, but I thought it was time to look at hardcovers again, because there's some fantastic stuff out there which I don't have in the archive. And just to talk a bit about my collecting, I collect for two reasons. I collect things to read them, because of course it's all about the reading. Anybody can buy a load of books, so I'm a collector, but the reading is the important thing. And because, as I always say, I've always lived in small houses, I have a modest income, I can't go splashing out and having huge sort of, libraries and stuff. I would if I could, of course. One has to cherry pick. I've always been a cherry picker. It's about picking the very best. And obviously you've got to read things and you let them go because they're not so good. But, especially my SF, I try and sort of cleave to the very best. And obviously it's subjective. One man's meat is another's poison, as I always say. So I buy the things which I like and collect those things which I'm really keen on. I also buy, increasingly in the last few years, I do buy for nostalgia reasons. I have great memories of my early days in the book trade selling SF, stocking SF. So books published in the 80s, with 70s and 80s liveries, have a particular meaning to me, which is partially nostalgic, but it's also about the love of the aesthetic of those times as well, so that's the thing. So we're going to do an unboxing, and I'm going to reveal my recent hardcover haul that I've been doing. It's not really a haul because it's different places, different times, but there we go. So I've got a package here from the very wonderful Andy Richards at Cold Tonnage Books. Thanks, Andy, who I've been buying books from for 30 years at least. What a fine man he is, and probably the UK's premier dealer. I do buy from Mike at Fine Editions as well, but Mike has been unwell recently, so he's not trading. So I do hope, if you're watching, Mike, if you're seeing this, I do hope you're okay, because miss your presence out there. And Mike's stuff is fantastic as well. And I buy elsewhere. I buy from Transformer, from Zardoz Books, fantastic literature, all great dealers, great stuff. So we'll just have a look at this, and I'm going to ramble on. Now, as I say, I often find the whole taking things out of a box thing really boring, but I can talk as we do so. So I sold some stuff and I've bought some hardcovers. I'm going to show you some things today. I bought some things which I've had in paperback for a long time. I was sort of wanted in hardcover, and I've also bought some book club editions, which is interesting because I don't normally buy book club editions. I normally got strict about buying firsts only. But I have got into the aesthetics of the Readers Union Book Club for SF in the last few years of its existence, when it started to do pictorial jackets, which were different to the standard firsts. And of course, they're much cheaper. You can pick them up often for about £5. And they're much nicer than the book club editions, which came before that in the sort of 70s and 60s, some which are just dreadful. So I'm going to show you some of those. So I'm just going to get this open. What is this, we ask ourselves? Well, I know what it is, but I'm going to show you now. So, as I say, Andy at Cold Tonnage, always very, very good. Very good prices. The thing with Andy is he's realistic, and you can take his prices as being indicative of the actual market and what books are actually worth. So, he's a solid pro. And I always find his stuff is in great nick as well. So, so kudos to Andy there. Though I do miss Mike not being on the market at the moment, because Mike's books are fantastic, and he's a great guy as well. So here we go. So I'm just going to have a look what we've got inside the shrink wrap, and there's some good packaging here. And let's see what we've got. Well, somebody I really like, his later work I've neglected, is Thomas M. Dish, and I've read all the early work, but I don't know what it was in the 80s. I didn't always keep up with what Tom was doing, and great new wave writer, wonderful. And this is The Priest in a Millennium edition, which dates back to, as it's Millennium, it must be the early 90s. And according to Scott Bradfield, hi Scott, whose channel is fantastic. Do watch it. The most ramshackle but the most compelling book channel on the internet. Scott really knows his stuff, cross genre, fantastic. He said he was friendly with Tom, and he said that Tom Dish hated the Catholic Church, and this appears to be about that. It's 1994. So I've been meaning to read this forever, and it's broadly categorized as a horror novel, so very, very nice, lovely. Not an uncommon book, but great condition there from Andy. I'm just going to slip that out of the way, see what else we've got. Something I didn't buy at the time, somebody who had quite a good career early on, Pat Murphy. This is her second novel, The City Not Long After, and her first novel, The Falling Woman, which is now a Gollancz fantasy masterwork. It was published as an SF novel. This is about archaeology. It's a very interesting book, and I've not read her for years. This is her second novel, as I say, The City Not Long After. Beautiful jacket, absolutely lovely. That's from Pan, and they categorize it as a fantasy novel. So she won the Nebula for The Falling Woman. I've not read this one. She is somebody I feel I've neglected I should read more of, so I'm really looking forward to reading that, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that. So I got that from Andy, and they were really good prices, which was great. So there we go. But what else have I acquired recently? Well, as I say, I've been looking at book club editions, and I became aware there was one I bought this months ago, and I meant to show you because if you're a sort of viewer of the channel for a while, you'll know I've been on a bit of a Poole Anderson collecting kick for a while. And one of his books, which I really want in hardcover, I want the Sidgwick edition with the full colour jacket, which is very, very uncommon in good nick, is the Avatar. And this is the Readers Union SF Book Club edition, and it's got basically the same cover design as the standard edition, except it's in sort of like a purple, black and white, and I'm very pleased with that. That was about £5, and that's great. I've got a huge pile of Andersons to read, so I'll get that at some point. So that'll do me until I can upgrade, if I can ever upgrade. You know, and a fine edition, Mike, when you're back online, I may get one from you, dear boy, so we'll see. So that's that. So I've had that for ages, actually, and I forgot to sort of show it in a haul when I should have months and months ago. And as I say, book club editions, here's some also from that same period. So I researched that period and looked at what was out there, and they probably did about 10 books of these pictorial jackets. So I'm just going to show you some more. So one I couldn't resist this at all, because it has it's got dinosaurs on the cover, and what's more, they're pink or red. There's red or sort of like a roseate colour. There you go. This is David Gerald, and this is Death Beast, and you know, it's very, very much in Sound of Thunder, Ray Bradbury territory, and isn't that fantastic? And that was really cheap, and I got that from Transformer in Glasgow. Thanks, guys. Great. There's a proper first up there, and I think, was it Robert Hale? I can't recall who did the true first. And it's out there, and it's gettable, and it's got a nice full colour jacket. But I was really drawn to the minimalist of that, so it's going to be great fun. I have read David before, and you'll just see it behind me. This is his book, The Man Who Faulted Himself, which is my favourite book by him. This is a Faber first. I've had this for years, and I've got a beautiful Ben Bella trade paperback of it as well. It's a time travel story, also some paradoxes. And it's almost written like a children's book, except that it's a little bit too sexually explicit to be a children's book. Now, David, of course, is gay, and he's most famous for writing the Star Trek episode Trouble with Tribbles, which you've probably seen, little furry things in the original run of Star Trek. And the first book I read by him was way, way back when I was a kid, and it was the tie-in novel to Battle for the Planet of the Apes, the film, and it's much, much better book than a film. It really is. So well done, David. And of course, he's collaborated with Larry Niven, and you know, good, solid, fun writer. So if you're not aware of David's work, check out The Man Who Folded Himself. I've not read Death Beast. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm sure it's going to be great, great fun. So also, on the book club front, I do like to get things in Gollancz yellow jacket, as you know. Some of them are very expensive when you find them in good nick. So sometimes I think, well, maybe I can do a compromise. And somebody who I'm revisiting, who I've read more or less all his early work, and by that I mean, you know, pretty much from his inception as a writer up until the 80s, is Richard Cowper. I call him Cowper. I know it's Cooper. I call him Cowper just to make it clear how it's spelled, because that's important for a bookseller. I know not everybody's a bookseller. I am, I know. But this is A Dream of Kinship, which is the first in the trilogy that he did. Or is it the second? I can't recall. I think Road to Calais is the first one. And I used to sell these a lot in Futura in the 80s. And I've not read this one. It's set in near future Britain, which has been reduced to a number of islands due to flooding and global warming and what have you. And I feel I've never got around to these, and I thought this was really beautiful. So I would have liked a Gollancz Yellow Jacket, but a decent copy one would probably cost about 30 quid. And, you know, once budget is limited, as I say, sell on eBay, bid you some money in. So this was really cheap. This was like about 5 quid or something. So fantastic. So I'm really pleased with that. So I do like him. So I'm sort of revisiting his work because I've neglected him in terms of my rereading in recent years. Also on the book club front, I decided to pick this up, Serpents Reach by C.J. Cherryh, which features a lady sort of brandishing what looks like an air freshener to me on the cover. And I think it would have been it was MacDonald who did the hardcover first, which is a very, very different jacket. But I was saying I'm going to pick it up because I do like the MacDonald covers from the early 80s. They've got great resonance with me. I've got quite a few of them actually by people like Larry Niven and Fred Saberhagen, who are not writers I'm that fond of, but they have a real sort of mythical, sort of iconic meaning for me. I haven't read Cherryh for years. I mean, I read it once when I used to be in a science fiction reading group in Bath, and she's not really my sort of thing. She won loads of awards, really popular, obviously. She added the H to the end of her name to make her sound more exotic and interesting, which I like. You know, I'll read this at some point, but it was really the cover and the fact that I was on this book club kick. So that's some of the stuff that Readers Union did. Really, really nice. You know, they're sort of, you know, if you get them in good nick, they're fine. Getting them in good nick is quite hard, but you know, if you shop around, you can. So they were all really cheap, so I'm really pleased with those. And you know, they're not the sort of books I would buy, you know, pay a lot of money for in the first. I would look out for bargains. Having said that, in relation to David Gerald, where I could have got the standard edition for a couple of quid more, I did the opposite with this book by J.H. Carr. Leviathan's Deep, and this is J.H. Carr's first novel. I've never read Carr. I am looking at more obscure minor authors these days, because I've read, you know, pretty much everything by all the major guys and what have you, from the sort of 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, early 90s. After that, I'm slightly more spotty. But I could have got a similar book club edition for about 5 quid. This was a little bit more. And I love that cover, and apparently a depiction of aliens is very good, so I like that. And it's Sidgwick. I've got a real thing for Sidgwick at the moment. I do like this stuff. It's sort of good, solid, you know, gradual publishing. A lot of it went to libraries. It's the sort of thing that doesn't appear anymore when publishers would issue books. They put them out there. They didn't have massive expectation, but they supported the author. There were people buying books in all sorts of places, borrowing books from libraries. And that sort of culture's gone now. Everything is like overhyped now, and everything's a work of genius, you know. Nobody is like a, you know, a quiet crafts person. So I'm looking forward to that, and I think that's quite beautiful. So they were all very modestly priced. I then decided to fill a gap. I don't normally do completism. Obviously, I have favourite authors, and when they're my favourites, I try and read everything. But as a friend of mine was saying work the other day, even the best authors have things in their canons which aren't always that great. But, you know, probably my favourite living author, I've mentioned several times, I've only done one video about him so far, is Christopher Priest. I was very, very aware that I have hardcover firsts of all of Chris's books, with the possible exception of my copy of Inverted World hardcover is not a first. It's a book club edition, and I don't have his first novel in Doctrinaire in a first because it's Faber, published in 1970. It's always been uncommon. Even when I started collecting, it was a book which was hard to find in good nick and very expensive. And now it'll cost you, if you can find one at all, around £600-700, and you know, it's just not going to happen. And I don't often get that thing where, oh, you know, I must have everything, because I'm not, as a collector, I'm not a completist, as I say. I cherry pick, so it's about the best. But Christopher is the best as far as I'm concerned, and I was very aware that I didn't have Indoctrinaire in hardcover, and usually you see the Harper and Row edition, the American one, which isn't as collectible. It's far more common. It's a lot on sale in the States. Doesn't have such a nice cover as the Faber one. and Faber is a certain British iconic quality I really love. But I thought, well, if I ever come across a decently priced copy of Indoctrinaire in the Harper and Row edition, I'll buy it. And I bought this the other day. This cost me £20. I won an eBay auction for it. Nobody else bid, I don't think. I was straight in there. It's got a nice red text block, and it's quarter bound in cloth, which is really nice. And even though I'm not mad about the cover design compared to the Faber one, you can look the Faber one up. This is a novel I really love. I think it's underrated. I think Chris underrates it himself. I think it's a fantastic new wave classic. I think it's a brilliant book. It's in Gollancz, so get out there and buy it. It's not a masterwork, but it's in Gollancz. It's really, really good, spiky, Kafkaesque, hardcore new wave SF. I love it. So I'm really pleased to get that. So I now have all of Chris's books in hardback. I mean, a lot of collectors are shocked. How can you be your favourite writer? How can you have loved his work for 30 years and not have all the hardcovers? I'm a reader first. I'm a collector second. So I'm very pleased with that. Very pleased to win that. And it's in great nick. So I was really, really very, very happy about that one. And talking about new wave, something else I picked up recently, a writer who died a while ago, I think it was about a year and a half ago, a Welsh science fiction writer. There aren't many of us. I mean, I've only had one story published, another one coming later this year in Deep Ends, probably again. Christopher Evans is the name that looms large, and there's this guy, Langton Jones, and this is The Eye of the Lens in Macmillan, US Macmillan, and this is published by Savoy as a paperback in the UK. And this is really, really hardcore new wave. This is very experimental, and it's very hard to describe. I think it should be a Gollancz masterwork. I don't think it would be very popular if it was, and it's just really, really, is it a novel? You could argue that it's a kind of episodic Ballardian fix-up novel. The stories all appeared in New Worlds between 1966 and 1969, and part of it appeared in one of Damon Knight's Orbit anthologies. And this is about as experimental as it gets, but I absolutely love new wave science fiction, British new wave science fiction. And Langton Jones was a musician and musicologist as well. I think he composed some modernist pieces, and that was pretty cheap. I think that was about £12. So I'm really pleased to get that. It's got a lovely psychedelic cover, and I haven't read it for years, so I'm looking forward to going back to it. Very spiky and difficult and awkward, but it is the sort of period of SF which I'm most interested in. So really pleased to get that. And what a shame he's no longer with us. Just out of interest, the third book in the Gormenghast trilogy by Mervyn Peake was largely put together from fragments and assembled by Langton Jones. So thanks to Langton for that. Otherwise we wouldn't have had the third volume, which is important stuff, in the history of literature and in fantasy writing particularly. And Peake, of course, a massive influence over people like Michael Moorcock, M. John Harrison, China Miéville, Vandermeer. People of the new weird. It all comes from Mervyn Peake, you know what I mean? So there we go. On to a couple of other things. This is a book which I saw my friend Graham had a copy when I was up there doing that video looking through his duplicate boxes, and he showed it to me, and it's in part of his attic stash that you can't actually film because it's like in a corner. There are a lot of parts in Graham's collection you can't get at because it's not his house is quite big, but there's just so much in it. Mine's quite small and there's so much in it, which is why I haven't done a collection video. I'll try and do one day, but as I say, I cherry pick. So for people who are blown away by size, then you're not going to be that impressed by my collection because it's, compared to some people, it's modest. It's probably 3,000 books. I mean, to some people that's nothing, but it's all about the best stuff. And I saw this book there and he showed it to me, and we were having a laugh at how great the cover was, and I decided to look for one because it had a dinosaur on the cover, like the David Gerrold books. I do like books with a dinosaur on the cover. I was a dinosaur nut as a kid. How that led into my SF obsession, I'm not sure, but there you go. But this is Robert Chilson, The Shores of Kansas. What a great title. Doesn't sound like a science fiction novel. And this is very, very much influenced by Ray Bradbury's The Sound of Thunder. Guy sent back into the past to combat a dinosaur, and he's only got an axe. And this is Robert Hale. Robert Hale's books, were mostly produced for libraries. They're often very sort of low rent things. There's one or two which are brilliant and very uncommon. I've got a Samuel R. Delany book which is two of his novelettes, and that is super rare. And it cost me £3. I mean, if you've got mint one, it's worth about 400. So this is about dinosaur hunting, and Hale, Robert Chilson, who I think did he do that sequel to The Time Machine, or am I thinking of somebody else? and I'm looking forward to that because that'll be great fun. When I'm in a dinosaur mode, that'll sort of get me through. So that was a really nice one. A couple of things I just wanted to show because my chums out there in the YouTube science fiction community, the very wonderful San Diego Matt of Book Pilled, hi, and also to Matt Defoe in Canada, hi both of you. Everybody's called Matt except me. Is this something going on? Is it like the Body Snatchers? Guys, I think you've both mentioned Peter Watts. There you go, Peter Watts, and both mentioned Blindsight, which is an amazing first contact novel. And I just wanted to clear up a little mystery. This is a UK hardcover edition from 2014 of Firefall. Now, Firefall is an omnibus of the two books, which are diptych. It's not a duology. Nobody uses the word duology. It's invented by some fool in publishing who doesn't really know what they're doing. It's diptych is the correct term for a two-book series. Duology is a conflated fake word. Don't use it or you'll sound like an amateur. And this omnibus is of the two. And it's interesting because Blindsight seems to be a lot more famous in the States as in the UK, and there's an introduction in this in which Peter Watts says about how it's a bit confusing because Echopraxia, the second novel in this after Blindsight, was published individually, and you know, I picked Echopraxia and started reading it without knowing about the first book in the series, and then I realized, oh hang on, that's the one that Damien Broderick and Paul Filippo mentioned in their 101 Best SF Novels 1985, I think it is, to 2010. So I backtracked and got this and got the two. So just for anybody out there's confused, if you've got Echopraxia, you really need this. You can get it in paperback. This is a hardcover from a few years ago, as I say. Just wanted to show you that. So that both books are in Firefall. So you don't need that paperback of Echopraxia. Why they haven't done a paperback of Blindsight, it baffles me, but there you go. And Peter Watts apologizes for that in his introduction to this, and it's published by the very wonderful Head of Zeus, great publisher, who now have their SF imprint called Ad Astra, to the stars. So there you go. Another one I wanted to show San Diego Matt, because he's a great guy, is his favorite Robert Silverberg, The World Inside, and I just want to show him, this is a UK hardcover first of The World Inside from Millington, a publisher who were run by, I think it was Thomas F. Montalone, the science fiction and horror writer who ran Millington in the 70s. They did some great work. And there you go, lovely. And I decided, because Matt is such a fan of this, and I've not read it for years, I decided that I was going to revisit it and read it again. So that's going back on the to read pile. And this is my paperback edition from iBooks, which isn't that gorgeous, with a glamorous lady there. She looks a bit damp and she looks a bit bloodied around the mouth. Can't remember what that refers to in the book, but I'm going to hang on to that because I've got two because it is so beautiful. iBooks, they did some lovely stuff. Like some of it is still available print on demand, and they're not so nice. The original printings are much nicer. So that's that there. So I'm going to reread that again because I felt it was an okay Silverberg, but not a major one. So in light of what Matt said, I'm going to revisit it and see what I think again. So I'll talk about that another time. Finally, to sort of wrap things up, I wanted to show you another book club edition, which I got. This is very cheap. This is £15. This is The Preserving Machine and Other Stories by Philip K. Dick. This dates back to about 1970, Science Fiction Book Club, Readers Union. And funnily enough, Readers Union were based in Newton Abbot, Devon, which is where my mate Jules Burt, he ran a bookshop there when we, just before we worked together. And he lives in, I think Plymouth is his neck of the woods. And we'll be doing a Hay on Wye trip together in early June, which will be epic. There'll be a video on his channel, a video on mine. It'll be sublime. And I got this because this is a very uncommon book. There's a Gollancz yellow jacket, which is really expensive in good nick. You're looking at £70 plus. And I've had, you know, a Granada paperback since about, I don't know, the 80s. There's a Pan Lozenge one, which is really hard to find in good nick. I must try and pick one up one day. This is sort of like the Major Dick collection of short stories before the 5-volume, you know, collected came out. But I was really pleased with that because, you know, an uncommon book, great thing. I'm going to finish off this book haul with a couple of very special things. I got some Gollancz yellow jackets, which I got recently. And first of all, I got the Series Solution by Bob Shaw, which I haven't read, a very short Shaw from the early 80s. I've read most of his work. I do love him. And this was, I think there was some out there about 25-30 quid. This was £15. I was really pleased with that, and it's beautiful neck. And as you see, I do have these in bags. That's because, as I think I've said before, my partner seems to think the one corner of the hideout is damp, and it's not. But you've got to be on the safe side. You never know. So there we are. Some people say, oh, you shouldn't put books in bags, you know, they'll react with them, whatever. I've never had a problem. I'm very glad I've done this in an area which did have a little bit of damp, but doesn't know. But, you know, it's like an insurance policy. So that's a serious solution. Wonderful minimalism of the Gollancz Yellow Jacket. And finally, a book which is very uncommon, The Lunatics of Terror by John Sladek, which has never had a mass market UK paperback as far as I'm aware. States, I'm not so sure. This is a late Sladek from about 84. I get the feeling that he'd fallen out of favour with publishers by then. He was American, of course. He spent a lot of time in the UK. He was a New Wave, New Worlds guy. I believe this is a short story collection, and when it came to me, it had a bit of a leaning spine, and simply for 24 hours I put very strong rubber bands around it, around the centre there, and they've cured the lean, which is incredible. You wouldn't think it would work. I've never tried it, but it actually does work. And I think there's a copy out there in Abe at the moment, which is about 40-50 quid, and this I think again was, I think it was on eBay, and it was about 17, and I made an offer, and I think I got it for about £14. So the guy knocked some money off, which was really good. So there you go. So I'm really, really pleased with that. So that expands the old Yellow Jackets thing. And, you know, my basic feeling about Gollancz Yellow Jackets is if you see them in good nick and they're a reasonable price, buy them. Because 8 times out of 10, they're fantastic books. So that's gone on quite longer than I thought. I'm going to have a look at my new acquisitions from Dish and Murphy there. So there's a hardcover haul for you. Maybe there'll be another haul at some point. You know, I do need to sell some more stuff on eBay because, you know, if you can sort of keep the ball rolling, it's good. And of course, one acquires new things, reads them, sells them on. I have limited space, as I say. So it's a good habit to sort of sell things on, you know, because it gets the fat out of your collection, you know. And if you've got the room and you've got the money and you can afford a vast library, that's fine. But if you're an ordinary Joe like me with limited resources and limited space, focus on the best, narrow it down. You decide what makes a collection. You decide what your collection is about. You decide what sort of collector you are. So anyway, enjoy your SF reading. This is Outlaw Bookseller signing out for now. And if you haven't, please subscribe and watch the backlist. Bye for now.